All right, so this is a continuation video. If you remember a few months ago, I got in the Mark 7 Apex 10 press and 9mm. Started out with just a manual press, knowing that eventually I was going to automate this. So the day has come and we are ready to automate. I've been using 38 Super Comp press, also an Apex 10 for the last several years to reload for most of my competition needs. But started shooting a little bit of limited optics, and this fully automated press in 9mm will allow me to not have to switch over and be able to load both calibers actually at the same time. I also got in the Mark 7 case feeder. That's going to go for my roll sizer as well as my decapper. Additionally, I got in the primer Xpress, the emergency stop, and then also the powder check sense. The cool thing with the Mark 7 lineup, especially in the Apex 10, is this allows us to be able to add products on as we see a need for them. So we'll continue to add on those sensors over the next month or so. But let's unbox this. Let's get started. Okay, so I've unboxed the case feeder that comes with the mounting brackets, the mounting arms, as well as everything you need for both large and small caliber pistol. The case feeder itself, over here, this is the emergency stop. This is the powder sense alarm with both a large and small pistol probes. The primer Xpress comes with the unit itself, the primer ramp, the guard, and then all the sensors that we need to hook it up to the Autodrive itself. Let's unbox the Autodrive, see what's inside. So you get the manual itself, the tablet, got the guard for the belt, got the belt itself. Also included in here, all the cables that we need, the mounting bracket for the tablet, as well as the tablet holder itself. We have everything we're going to need to mount this to the bench itself, and then the gears. Last thing in the box is the Autodrive itself. Let's take a look. Okay, so here is the Autodrive with the stand for the press. First step is we've got to get our current Apex 10 off from the base pad that it's on and put onto the plate with the Autodrive. So we're going to remove these 4 screws here. All right, we're going to slide this over. We'll get this plate out of the way. We'll bring the Autodrive right in its place. All right, we're going to slide the press over back onto the Autodrive. And we're going to attach it with those same 4 screws. The Autodrive base plate now. This is the point in time that everybody wants to automate their press really looks forward to. We're going to loosen this up. This you don't need anymore. All right, so we've left the shaft adapter in place. We're going to take the link arm, and that slides over it. The sprocket slides onto this, and there's 2 screws we're going to use to mount this in place. Once those are in place, the sprocket cap can go on. The set screw can slide in. We're going to tighten that all the way up as well. We are now going to install the belt guard. There are 3 screws that will hold this in place. The first 2 will go on the inside of the guard and tighten down. The last one will go on the back side. And that will tighten down as well.
So this is the tablet holder. This is the mount that's actually going to go on the press itself. Your tablet will connect into here. We're going to use these 4 to help to mount the tablet itself, power supply, and then what's going to connect back to the Autodrive. So this is going to mount to the holder. The tablet is going to slide into here. and then we're ready to mount it to the press.
We're now looking at the back of the Autodrive. The micro USB, that's just going to connect to the tablet itself. There's two length cords. One micro USB is going to connect into the tablet. That's the shorter of the two pieces. The second one is going to connect into the back of the Autodrive, right here. This is the USB that comes off from the motor itself, and that's going to connect into the USB port right here. Also coming off from the motor itself is both a 6-pin and an 8-pin cord. The 8-pin is going to plug into the back of the unit. The 6-pin is going to plug into the side of the unit. Also on the back side of the unit, you have the 7 port, which is going to be for the powder measure. Port 6 is for the remote stop, and port 5 is for the decap sense. We're looking at the side of the Autodrive now. This is the actual power cable for the Autodrive itself. This is the 6-pin for the motor that we talked about previously. The power to the tablet. Port 1 is for the primer sense and swage sense. Port 2 is for primer orientation sensor. Port 3 is the bullet sense, and port 4 is for the powder sense. There's an additional cable that we'll need to install for the Mr. Bullet feeder. So this is going to go in between the bullet dropper and the feeder itself. We're going to turn on the Autodrive. We're going to turn on our tablet.
I unfortunately did lose audio during the initial part of the Primer Xpress installation. Laid out before us, though, is everything you'll get in the box with the Primer Xpress. This includes the Primer Xpress unit itself, the steel safety shield, all the mounting hardware, as well as the power adapter control box and wiring harness. The first thing we're going to need to do to be able to get the Primer Xpress installed is to remove the primer tube assembly, as well as the tool head from the Apex 10 press. We will lower the tool head to the down position. We're going to remove the 2 screws that hold in the priming tube assembly here in the back of the press. We're now going to remove the tool head. We're going to loosen up and unthread the center bolt that holds the tool head in place. We'll need to unhook the Mr. Bullet feeder, as well as the wiring, and also need to remove the case feed drop funnel. Once this is all removed, we will be able to lift the tool head directly off from the press. We actually won't need that return spring with the Autodrive in place. We can now remove the plastic primer disc cover on the back of the press. That will allow us to be able to access and remove the shuttle as well as the plastic insert. We can now remove the shell plate retention spring. This will lift right up. We can now loosen up the 4 set screws that hold on the shell plate nut. Unscrew the shell plate nut until it's completely removed from the shaft itself. There are also 4 screws that hold on the shell retainer spring mount. We're going to remove those entirely as well. The last thing that we're going to need to do here is loosen up the set screws for the case ejection arm. Once those are loosened up, we can pivot this out of the way. Finally, we're going to need to push in the case feed ram, and then we should be able to lift the shell plate directly off from the press. We have already removed the 3 screws for the plastic primer disc cover. This can now be removed. Allows us to be able to access the primer shuttle. We can remove the center screw and we'll be able to lift the shuttle disc right up off from the press itself. This will then allow us to be able to remove the plastic insert so that we can install the Primer Express onto the machine. We're now going to place the Primer Express directly onto the press. The primer chute for the Primer Express will slide right into where the plastic insert was removed. There are 2 flathead screws that will go into the shuttle housing itself and mount to the side. We are then going to install the stabilizing brace for the shuttle housing. This applies upward pressure on the Primer Express chassis. It's very important here to make sure that the shuttle on the Primer Express is completely flush. This is going to allow the primer disc guide to freely float over the top of this.
Now we're going to install the primer chute cover. It's going to slide on here and snap in. Also included is the metal shield that will slide over here. There are 2 screws that will hold this into place. Last thing we're going to do is install this wiring harness. I'm just going to go right into here. That will snap in place. So this is also a great time to lubricate and grease the machine if you haven't done so already. I haven't actually used this press yet, so we're going to skip that step. We're going to put our shell plate back in place. That's going to go on. We're going to tighten up our set screws. Put our spring back on. Put our ejection rod back in. All right, now we're ready to install the tool head. Tool head put back in place. We had removed that return spring. That's not needed with the Autodrive. Slide that all the way down. Tighten this up. Get our wires back in place. On the Mr. Bullet feeder, that is set up. Connect this. This can come back up here. We're ready to go. All right, so we have the power cable to put into the control box. Plug that in. So there's certainly a lot of adjustments that can be made with the Primer Express if you are finding that your primers aren't fully settling in there. You can adjust the base of the press to kind of change that angle so it will allow those primers to slide a little more effectively. You can adjust the height of the Primer Express if you're finding that they're not necessarily sliding down quite as effectively. So there are a few adjustments that can be made if you're having any difficulties with that. Let's put a few primers in there. Install. Start that up. So we're getting ready to install the powder sense onto the press itself. In the kit, you're going to see that it comes with a small rifle, small pistol, large pistol, probe. It also is going to come with the micro as well as the macro powder check rod. The variation here is the level of accuracy. If you're using all new brass, similar head stamp or same head stamp, we're going to use the micro. Where I'm reloading this in 9mm, I'm using mixed head stamp range brass. I'm going to be using the macro. There's a set screw on the side of the housing that will loosen up and allow you to be able to remove the die. The die I'm going to screw into the tool head about halfway. And then we're going to select our small pistol and macro, and those are going to go together for us. So we're on the left side of the press. We're going to insert the die into station 6, and we will put that about halfway in. So we have our housing. This is going to connect into port 4 of the Autodrive. In this, I'm going to place the macro rod. I have a little bit of purple Loctite on the probe itself, and that's going to screw into here. This is going to drop down into the die itself. We're not going to tighten up that set screw because that's going to allow us to adjust this. Okay, our next step is we are going to set up the powder check sense itself. We're going to take a case with our desired powder charge and put that into the shell plate. On our press, we're going to move all the way to the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw down my die assembly until my powder check is flush with the top of the housing. Once we're there, we're going to lock down the die. And then we're going to lock down our set screw so that that's flush. To get the powder sense installed, we are now going to test it out. We've got 2 cases here. One has the correct powder charge in it. We're going to go back to our sensors and make sure that our digital powder check is on. We'll go back to control. We'll do a single cycle, and this should run all the way through as we have an appropriate powder charge set up for our powder sense. Okay, the second one we're going to do is with a case that has no powder charge, and this should trip the sensor. All right, so digital powder check notification, case powder level incorrect. Perfectly set up. So the last thing we're going to install today is the remote stop. 2 varieties for this. There's the handheld and then there's the benchtop version of this. This is going to go in the back of the Autodrive into port 6. And then what this allows us to do, if we see a point that we need to stop the press manually, we can press that button. We're going to go back to our sensors, shut off our digital powder check because I've taken the case off from there. We're going to activate the remote stop. We'll hit run. And then once we press that, remote stop is activated. We've gone through the process of installing Autodrive on the Mark 7 Apex 10. We've also installed the primer Xpress, the digital powder check, and then also the remote stop. I do have a few more sensors coming over the next few weeks, so we'll do some more videos. Certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Reach out at any point, but hope you guys enjoy your press.